Alright, this is Mr. Gillum, and today we're going to be using unit prices and comparing prices using a unit rate. And so we've talked a little bit about unit rates before, and what a unit rate is a comparison of one quantity to one unit of another quantity. Look for and use the word per. Okay, so like one of the most common ones would be miles per hour. We use that one quite a bit. Miles per hour. So how many miles per, we don't say one, but per 1 hour. And so today we're going to apply this concept, this unit rate concept, to price per 1 unit of, like for instance, if you're buying a dozen eggs at $1.20, how much per egg does it cost? So we're going to find the price of one individualized part. And then we're going to be able to compare to see which deal is a better deal. And so in this case, I want to start with the ratio and the unit rate for each problem. And so on this column, let's go ahead and write, I want to do the ratio, and on the next one I want to do the unit rate. Okay, and in this case, we're not talking about prices, but just really making a comparison. And so in this case, in the first example, it says per container. It doesn't say per one, but per one container. And so I know that the ratio per container, so the container should be second, pints per container. So pints on the left, containers on the right, 75 to 5. If I have 75 pints of juice in 5 containers, then that would mean there would be 15 pints per container. 5 goes into 75 15 times. Okay, 15 pints per one container. And so we call this the unit rate, how much each single container has in it, if there's 75 spread out over 5 containers. Okay, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit. We're going to apply this to prices here in a second. And so again, use that keyword per. It doesn't say per 1 hour, but when it says per hour, it means per 1 hour. And so the ratio, again, because we're talking about 40 centimeters of snow in 20 hours, we would compare 40 to 20. So centimeters to hours. And in this case, we know that 20 goes into 40, or you could think of it as a fraction like this, would be 2. So there's 2 centimeters per hour, and that would make sense. If there are 20 hours that goes by, and now there's 40 centimeters, that would mean there would be 2 for every hour. Okay, and this is called the unit rate when you're talking about in 1 unit. So we're comparing one quantity to 1 unit of another quantity. In this case, it says pieces per bag, so we're going to compare pieces to the number of bags. In this case, 216 to 6. And I know that 6 goes into 216 36 times, so there must be 36 pieces per bag. And you can always check to see as well, if that makes sense. If there's 36 pieces per bag and there's 6 bags, 6, 3, 216. There you go. And so again, this is called the unit rate because it's per 1 bag. And so that's called the unit rate. Finally, we're doing dollars per lawn. And so we're going to compare dollars to lawns. So $120 to 4 lawns. So I would like to know per 1 lawn. So if I could reduce this, and I think it will reduce very well, I would get $30 per lawn. 30, 60, 90, 120. And this again is called the unit rate. Okay, now we're going to use that when we're comparing prices. The unit rate is very useful when you're saying, when you're doing Okay, so now let's try to apply these unit rates to a problem with prices in it. It says that a bookstore was selling 5 books for $27.25. Online, you could buy 6 books for $32.16. Which place has a lower unit price? And when I ask you about a lower unit price, you want to know which one is, how much does 1 book cost in each instance. That's really what it's asking, because you don't want to pay more, you want to pay less. And so we are looking for the lower unit price, or the lower price for 1 book. Okay, so we need to find the price per book. That's what we're thinking. And so similarly to the last slide that we just did, we're going to compare the price to the number of books. So $27.25 for 5 books, or $32.16 for 6 books. And so again, I like to think of my ratios as fractions: 27.25 over 5, or 32.16 over 6. And I know that the fraction bar means division. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use my calculator to calculate whatever 27.25 divided by 5 is. I could also use long division, but I don't want to take up all your time on this video. But I do want to emphasize again that this fraction bar really means division. So I need to divide both the top and the bottom by 5 so I can get the unit rate per one book. Okay, and so that's what I'm going to do. When I divide 27.25 by 5, I get $5.45 for every book. And when I divide $32.16 by 6, I get $5.36 per book. And so now I know that the lower unit price would be the books that are online. Okay, so I would say that the lower unit price is the online books. Okay, and so we're just using these unit rates to determine which is the better deal. You might see another problem kind of like this. And on this problem, we're actually going to use proportions. It says that the store beef jerky was $73.70 for 5 pounds. And you bought 7 pounds. How much did it cost? Ooh, tricky problem. So we probably want to know, really, the price per pound, right? So we could solve this with proportions, like we have in the past, and say, well, $73.70 to 5 pounds should be equal to, if we're paying the same amount per pound, something to 7. And we could solve it like this. So that's one way that we have solved these in the past. But today, let's use our unit rates. So instead of solving it with a proportion, which is one option that we could do, let's solve it using a unit rate. So first of all, let's see how much the price per 1 pound is. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say $73.70 is for 5 pounds. I would like it to be per 1 pound. So I'm going to divide by 5, get that unit rate. Okay, and $73.70 divided by 5 is $14.74. But the problem does go on to say, we didn't buy just 1 pound, we bought 7 pounds. So if it's $14.74 for 1 pound per pound, for 7 pounds we would have to multiply that by 7. So when I take $14.74 multiplied by 7, I get $103.18. Okay? Take a look at one more here. It says in September, a clothing store had a sale where you get 3 scarves for $13.35. In October, the price changed from 5 scarves for $22.65. Which month did the scarf cost the most? We're looking for the scarf that cost the most, not the better deal, but the scarf that cost the most. So let's take a look here. I know that we probably need to find the price per scarf. That's probably what we're thinking. Okay, or what we should be thinking. And so I see that the price for scarf in September was $13.35 for 3. And I see the price per scarf in October was $22.65 for 5. And I'd like to get the unit rate to know how much each scarf is worth. How much each scarf costs, I should say. And so what I'm going to do is I'm literally just going to divide this fraction. Or I could think of it as, okay, I want to change the 3 to a 1 to find the unit rate, so I'll divide that by 3, and I'll also divide $13.35 by 3. When I divide $13.35 by 3, I get $4.45. Similarly, I want to see how much one scarf costs in October. So I'm going to divide $22.65 by 5. And I see that that equals 4.53. And so I need to make sure that I'm careful, because I would prefer to buy the scarves in September because they're cheaper. But the question asks, which month did the scarf cost the most? And in that case, it would be October. October scarves cost more. All right. And so we're just using these unit rates to compare prices because it's not clear, like in some of these instances, the unit rate is the best way to determine which is a better deal or which is more expensive. Because mental math is not like a good, it's hard to tell whether 3 scarves for $13.35 or 5 scarves for $22.65 is the better deal. But now we know for sure because we know how much the price of each scarf was. Okay, so I think that's it for today. Yes, it is. So, just keep in mind, we're just going back to unit rates and using what we know about proportions and ratios to compare prices.